Are you worried about the sleepless nights once your newborn arrives, the potential bickering that might happen with your partner, and how you both will come together to raise your new baby? This episode is all about how to prepare your mental health and get on the same level as your partner before your baby arrives. Thanks for joining us. This is Preggy Pals.
Is that a plus sign?
Pink or blue? Hospital or home birth?
What type of food should I be eating?
I think I just peed myself. I'm pregnant and I have to exercise.
What pregnancy glow?
Wait, was that a contraction?
Gotta make these pants fit. I've got kinkles.
What do you mean there's more than one?
You've got the symptoms, and now you've got the support you need for a happy 9 months. This is Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
Welcome to Preggy Pals. My name is Kaylee, and I'll be your host today. If you haven't already, be sure to visit our website at newmommymedia.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which keeps you updated on all the episodes we release each week. Another great way to stay updated is to hit that subscribe button in your podcast app. And if you're looking for a way to get even more involved with our show, then check out our online community. It's called Mighty Moms. That's where we chat more about the topics discussed here on our show, and it's an easy way to learn about our recordings so you can join us live. This is a very fun episode today. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of listeners. So let's meet today's panel of guests, and our expert today is Emily Mason. Emily is currently the Education Chair for ICEA and founder of Edubration. I love that. And is a doctoral student at the University of Arkansas. She has her master's in early childhood education and a master's in special education. Emily, welcome to Preggy Pals. This is your first time being on our show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I started my motherhood journey a little bit differently from everyone else. I think motherhood's very different for each person. But my first daughter was adopted through the foster care system. And I really dove into what can I do to meet her where she was at. And as I dug into this, I realized that there was not a lot of information that was out there that moms could access without this taboo or stigma of feeling less than. And so that's why I founded Edubration and went back and got my master's in both early childhood and in special education to help moms along the way and give them that outlet that they don't know where to go in those instances.
I love that. And I love your expertise, if I may say, in having delved with both instances. So the adoption system and dealing with your mental health that way, and then going through pregnancy and welcoming a newborn baby. I think that is so wonderful that you're willing to share your experience and help other mothers, in that realm.
Thank you.
Next, we have two other guests joining us. We also have Christy Del Castillo Hagee joining us, who is a board-certified emergency physician and studies newborn brain injury and developmental disabilities caused by insufficient feeding. She co-founded the Fed is Best Foundation when her own firstborn son was harmed by unsafe advice on exclusive breastfeeding from breastfeeding books, breastfeeding classes, and health professionals. When she learned that these complications were happening on a daily basis to infants across the globe as a result of things commonly taught to parents. Christy, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you. You've kind of covered quite a lot.
Yeah,
quite a
mouthful.
lot there. I don't know if I have anything to say past that, but thank you. Maybe. So I'm here because, I'm one of the co-founders of the Fed is Best Foundation, and our mission is really to support parents wherever they are, whatever they can do. And one of the things that I think is really difficult for new parents, new mothers, is that there's a certain expectation of what you are supposed to be. And it's this one thing: how you feed your baby, how you raise them, who you are as a parent. It seems like we're all trying to live up to one standard. And it took becoming a real parent, a new parent, to realize all of that, all those expectations really are not within your control. So I'm really happy to be here because I would really love to talk about how postpartum mental health is affected by parents or mothers' expectations of their feeding journeys, and how sometimes when that isn't met, that it can really impact their mental health afterwards. I really want new moms who are listening to this to understand that things happen and that it's maybe different from what you expected, but there's so many ways to be a really good mom. And that's the goal. Happy mom, happy baby, happy family. That's my
1000%. And I think, and I'm glad you have expertise in the Fed is Best campaign, because I think for so many women, and myself included, I always thought, oh, I'm going to breastfeed my daughter. And that's what I thought the entire pregnancy. And then I have her, and a lot of women struggle with breastfeeding, myself included. And that was a real mental challenge for me and some of my friends. And I love that we can prepare ahead of time and just give helpful information and tips and focus on the mental health aspect of mom, because I know so many women are like, oh, I'll just breastfeed. And then
yes.
they, have the baby and then there's complications.
Right.
So I am excited
Absolutely.
to dive into that. Lastly, we have Lynette Hafkin joining us, who is a hospital and private practice lactation consultant, former La Leche League leader, and advocate for a family-centered lactation and infant feeding support. Lynette's goal throughout her 20-year vocation has been to help families breastfeed in a safe, enjoyable, and sustainable way, and in some cases transition to infant formula while knowing their babies would thrive from being loved and fed. Lynette, thank you so much for joining us. If you could just give yourself a little bio and say hello.
So I started this journey before I became a mother, and I knew I was going to breastfeed. My mother breastfed my sister and I over a year. She got help from La Leche League, and so I knew I was going to do it, and I did, but it didn't happen the way I had expected. And basically, I have three kids, and none of them happened the way I expected. And I feel like because of my experience, I have a special insight into the fear that new mothers feel when they give birth and they've been told all these things. Like I cried when I first had to give formula. I'm talking about myself. I cried when I first had to give formula to my 35 weeker because I was so scared that I was contaminating her gut, because I had heard so many things about that. I guess this is maybe getting off track of a bio.
No, it's
uh,
okay.
You're fine.
yeah, I mean, it's just been a very long evolution. Like before I was pregnant, I knew everything. Then I knew nothing. And then gradually
Yep.
I started learning that breastfeeding is great. I loved it, but there are many other ways to feed and love your baby, and they're all just wonderful.
Exactly. I love that. And I love that we're going to dive into that, especially. And I wish I listened to this episode that we were recording now when I
Yeah.
was pregnant.
Yes.
I think this is so important because we're going to talk about so many topics about how to prepare and get in such a good mind space before the baby arrives. So I'll also be sharing some of my own breastfeeding experiences, postpartum experiences with hormonal shifts. I mean, it's the huge hormonal shift after you give birth. And so it's good to prepare ahead of time. But first, let's take a quick break. And when we return, we will dive into today's topic. Today, we're discussing why parents' mental health should be part of the conversation and takeaway points for tired parents needing the big picture. I know the early days and weeks feel like a blur, and I wish I would have prepared a little bit more before giving birth. For example, I was so prepared on labor and contractions and when labor is going to start for myself. I did not even imagine, wow, I need to prepare for my mental health after my daughter was born. And so let's dive into it. So, first question, I have a couple of bullet point questions for everyone. But first question is for Emily. Can you please explain postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, and what are some signs and symptoms that, maybe pregnant mothers should look out for ahead of time and kind of have on their radar?
Postpartum anxiety is experienced by about 80% of women after birth, and it's the excessive worrying, the dread, the racing thoughts. I really kind of put that as my everyday. I feel like the anxieties of our life are just heightened after we have our babies. And so when you start to feel those worrying, those dread feelings, those racing thoughts, taking a moment to identify what, well, first you just had a baby, so your hormones are all over the place. And then realizing
Yes.
that this is not a forever piece. This is usually on average 10 to 14 days of the anxiety for most moms. With the depression piece, that's going a little bit longer. The more severe feelings, you have these on average weeks to months, with 5% of the population actually experiencing postpartum depression for the first 3 years after a baby is born. And realizing, I think, as we prepare, that if you have been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, mental health prior to having your baby, you are at a heightened risk of experiencing those feelings after your baby's born. So I always encourage people to have those open and honest conversations with their healthcare providers, with their postpartum doulas, with their tribe of people that are going to be surrounding them, because they will happen, more likely than not, if you have been diagnosed. The Mayo Clinic has actually come out with some other information like genetics. So if you have a family history of depression, anxiety, that puts you in that heightened risk. If you've had a difficult birth, preemies, or you had planned to have a natural birth and you ended up having a C-section, that puts you in a heightened category. Multiples, breastfeeding complications, and even gestational diabetes will put you in that heightened category of just being more aware that you may be feeling these feelings, and you need to reach out and get some help if you are starting to feel those feelings.
How interesting. And quick follow-up question. It's kind of a two-parter. Do women only experience postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, or the birthing parent, or can the partner, husband, boyfriend, whatever it may be, can they also experience some sort of postpartum depression?
Absolutely. So it looks different for each individual, and I tell people uh, it's going to come out differently for every person. So my biggest piece that I look for as a postpartum doula coming in, working with families, is seeing those big shifts. With dads, I see, or the partner, I see a lot of financial worry. That's where it tends to come out, of making sure, are we going to have enough money to do this? And I see they pinpoint that a lot of times. But absolutely, the partners, even family members, if a lot of my families have uh, mothers that are living with them, they can start to feel shifts in some of those feelings because they are so close to the families and the day to day.
How interesting. And I can only imagine, at least in my case, breastfeeding was a big part of my journey, and also the financial journey. Here I thought when I was pregnant, oh, I'll just breastfeed because it's free. Is it? But is it really free? What are some options for parents to kind of prepare for breastfeeding?
I think as far as mothers who are planning on breastfeeding, it's really important to try to prepare yourself. And of course, I'm going to give a plug for our book, which is Fetta's best book, already available on Amazon. Can't help it, sorry. I mean, our resource as well as our online resource that's going to be tied to the book, really tries to prepare parents how to not only talk about how not only learn about the mechanics of breastfeeding and positioning and milk maintenance, but also managing expectations. So this is, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I went. Just like you, I feel like everyone in the room had the same pregnancy expectation, which is you read the books, you learn how to parent and how to breastfeed and do all those things, and that's how it's going to happen as soon as they pop out. You know what I mean? And so a really big piece of humble pie to all new moms out there is that you're going to eat some. I mean, a little piece of advice is that you're going to eat some humble pie once you get there. So, while it's really important to be prepared to feed your baby, know that sometimes things don't go exactly as planned. So, for instance, two things with related to breastfeeding is sometimes colostrum is just not enough to feed a baby. Okay, and the reason why that's the case. Okay, you're going to hear lots of things about on the internet. If you looked up colostrum, it's all your baby needs, and in real life, that's not the case. If you don't have enough colostrum, if you are, older mom, C-section mom, all sorts of reasons, even if you're regular healthy term baby delivering mom, there are some times when colostrum is just not enough, and that happened to me. And being prepared, knowing that you know what, if your baby needs a little bit of formula for the first couple of days until your milk comes in, and know that that's not abnormal or a failure or anything that you're doing wrong. Know that if that happens, it's okay, because we have been doing that for millennia. In fact, if you look at the data, breastfeeding moms all across the globe very commonly during that pre-lactogenesis period, before your milk comes in period, have to supplement. So just knowing that, number one, that if your baby needs a supplement in the first days of life, you haven't failed. Number two, sometimes the milk comes in really late and your baby needs supplementation because of that. And so know that sometimes that's really common too, and you're not failing if you have to supplement until the milk does come in. And then number three, we live, all moms, all birthing parents uh, exist on a spectrum of milk producing ability. Okay. And so we're very commonly given the expectation that all moms, nearly all moms, can produce all that their baby needs from birth to 6 months, as long as you're doing it right, you're trying hard enough, you're getting the right lactation support. In real life, that's not true. That's in real life, only, even with the billions that have been put in towards promoting exclusive breastfeeding, less than 50% across the globe are exclusively breastfeeding at 6 months. And so you're not rare and you're not doing it wrong if you, for some reason, find out that you're not producing enough, or things aren't working out, or there are other reasons outside of lactation that makes it necessary to feed formula, either partially or exclusively. So, and how that relates to mental health, I can tell you from my own experience and other moms' experience, about talking about how infant feeding is related to mental health, is that when I I had twins for my second pregnancy, and with my firstborn, I was able to kind of persist and get to that exclusive breastfeeding status by triple feeding and doing everything I could to get to that status. And with my twins, is a totally different story. I had twins. I had plenty of milk at the beginning, but then I couldn't keep up. I couldn't keep up with their need. I couldn't keep up as a parent, and my mental health slowly but surely declined over the next couple of weeks, until my milk was just gone, dried up. I'd pump all day long and I'd produce only 1 ounce a day. And that's when I realized that not only was I not succeeding, but I was not spending any time with my kids, and I was clinically depressed. I'd experienced depression before, and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to be there for my kids. I'm going to hold my babies, which I hadn't gotten to do in days because I was plugged up to, I mean, I was attached to a pump. And coming to that
Yep.
point where you realize, what am I doing? My plan, everything I'm doing is not achieving the outcome that I want, which is to be happy, for my children to be happy and nourished and held, and for me to, that's when you realize sometimes, and I think a lot of moms are discovering this only after they give birth, is that sometimes your plan is not achieving what you want. Your plan, perhaps some moms are wanting to exclusively breastfeed and their child is failing to thrive. And then they realize only months afterwards that happened, and then the guilt that happens after that is immense. And if even if you have plenty of milk and breastfeeding is working out, but the experience and the demand is taking a toll on your mental health, then that's also not a plan that's working out, because your baby needs you more than your breast milk. And so, gosh, I'm sorry, I'm just talking. And I don't know if
No,
I
these are
don't know if
great. This is great. And this kind of segues to my next question for Lynette. But I guess as a private practice lactation consultant, and I'm sure you work with parents all the time, what are some common similarities you see or you can point out? Obviously, your expertise is breastfeeding, But what are some common things you see out when you kind of notice a mother might have postpartum depression over feeding struggles? And let's talk even about the tiredness of having a newborn. But what are some common themes you see with women who eventually do get diagnosed or you suspect might have postpartum depression / anxiety?
Well, first of all, I like to give people the Edinburgh postnatal depression scale to just kind of screen them and see if, they might need to reach out to a mental health professional since it's so common. And of course, the people I'm seeing are seeing me because they have breastfeeding problems. So I think it's important to really make that part of your intake information when you're, meeting a new client. I wanted to just get back to something Christy said about the early days when colostrum sometimes isn't enough. Um, I obviously completely support the idea of exclusive breastfeeding, and I really wanted to do it. I did it, but not everybody is going to have enough colostrum. That's just a biological fact. And so having a plan B, even if you want to exclusively breastfeed and that's your plan, having a plan B to what you will do if you find that your baby isn't getting enough is so critical, because when I have to tell a new mother that her baby is showing signs of dehydration or has lost too much weight, it's indescribably painful, and that never leaves you. Those mothers will feel that anguish for the rest of their lives, maybe not every single day, but when they look back, knowing that their baby essentially was hungry and thirsty for days. I mean, I just can't say enough about how painful that is. And I think that is something that you can prevent a lot of mental health issues, I would assume, by, having that plan B so that you don't need to go through that and your baby doesn't need to go through that. I really get into how the mom is feeling about how everything about what's happening, like what her plan was, what, happened that derailed it, how she felt about that, what support she has she gotten enough sleep? That is huge. And
Mhm. Mhm.
want to talk about that for hours,
Yeah.
but um, usually at some point during the discussion, she'll start crying or get choked up. And then, we can really talk through a good solution for her and her baby, whether it is preserving exclusive breastfeeding for her, because that is totally doable if the milk supply is there and she really wants to continue full exclusive breastfeeding. That is doable, and we make an individualized plan that involves the whole family support system. It's not all on the mother. Um, and so, I mean, I guess it's just an organic process. Like, I don't have like a list of signs. I just, you know, kind of gauge the mother's emotional state, like read the room, ask the other people in the family what they have noticed and how much sleep everyone's gotten, not just the mom, but everyone. And that can be very illuminating, because when the mother's gotten no more than an hour of unbroken sleep in the last 24 hours, and everybody else has gotten like 6 hours of unbroken, uninterrupted sleep,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge thing that needs to be addressed.
I love that's the great segue to our next question. I'm going to toss it back over to Emily, but let's talk about newborn exhaustion. I'll say this: when I was pregnant, so many people were like, "Oh, make sure you get enough sleep now, because when the baby comes, you're not going to be sleeping." And that, I don't know what it was about that, but it just grinded my gears. I was already not sleeping well, being 8 9 months pregnant, and then when people would tell me that, I was like, it can't be worse than pregnancy. In my case, it was
Mhm.
not for everyone's, but for my case,
Mhm.
I did not have a sleeper, which is okay.
Mhm.
But Emily, anyway, talk a little bit about sleep deprivation and how to prepare a little bit beforehand.
Yeah, I wish there was a magic answer that we could just say, this is what you should do, and it would work. So it's different for every person. I think setting reasonable expectations is part of the process I work with my moms. That there's this superhero status that we all feel the need to live up to, and I explain, you were a superhero already. You carried an entire life inside of you and you have that baby. It's okay to drop the cape for a little bit and take care of you. And those expectations are those set by society. And what I'm working on doing is kind of destigmatizing and breaking down some of those expectations and bringing in that support system, making sure that people know you can reach out to a postpartum doula, you can reach out to a friend, a confidant, families that have kids that are around the same age or even 5 years older to come in and help with those day-to-day transitions. It's okay to ask for help. A lot of my work has been working with moms to help them realize that there's not a light switch that goes off at 6 weeks and now go back to work and pick up your life and everything's going to be great. So my goal and with what I founded with my organization is that we help moms through the first 1,000 days. So we work with families through the first 1,000 days to ensure that we're really building on the backside reasonable expectations, and we're helping you transition through each one of these new phases in life. So it doesn't just stop when the newborn sleep exhaustion's over, because then you're into toddler sleep exhaustion and setting up those reasonable expectations moving forward, I think is important. And then sleeping when you can, creating spaces to allow people to come in and help you. I am very much a person that I enjoy my space. I enjoy how I do things. And giving somebody access to my home was very, very difficult for me. But I knew it was something I needed to do in order to protect my mental health and give myself some time to take an hour and sleep and not feel guilty about taking that hour. So just managing those expectations and having those check-ins frequently with your support system and let them know what you need, as well as if you have that support system around you, such as your postpartum doula, tell them keep me in line, check me sometimes, that I'm trying to be a superhero and I have to tell some of my moms, hey, I see you're doing great, but I need you to give me the cape for a minute and you take a break.
I love all of this advice. And I know some other, helpful tips that were given to me and some of my friends was sleep when the baby sleeps. And I definitely did that. Thankfully, my baby wasn't. I know some babies sleep during the day and they're up all night. I didn't have that. But when she would take her naps during the day, I would be sleeping there right next to her. She'd be in her little bassinet and I would be right next to her sleeping. Yes, because I noticed the days where I did not take a nap with her, I could just feel my body and my mental health decreasing, because here you have this new baby and you're trying to cater to them, and then but you're not catering to yourself. And so even like you mentioned, Emily, giving that extra hour to just hand the baby off to whether it's your mom or your dad or your husband, your partner, definitely is helpful for mental health. We have covered a lot. I love all of this. We will take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we will dive more into the topics. Welcome back to Preggy Pals. We are continuing with our top list of mental health awareness, how to prepare when you have your baby inside as you get ready to give birth to your baby, and just tips and tricks for all of the new mom struggles that you might face, whether that's breastfeeding, exhaustion. We were talking actually in the break about postpartum doulas. To share my story really quick, I hired a doula. My husband's in the military, so we have TRICARE. And with that, hiring a doula came with hiring, the same postpartum doula. And so I was so lucky to have the postpartum help, because being a military wife, I'm not close to family at all. And so it was really nice. She showed up three times when after my daughter was born for a good long stay. It was like 2 to 3 hours each visit, and it was every 2 weeks up until 6 weeks. And it was so helpful. Emily, my question for you is, how can having a postpartum doula benefit the mother's experience for postpartum? And is that something that you recommend, women looking into as they prepare for their birth?
Absolutely. As somebody who is a postpartum doula, trains postpartum doulas, I had my own postpartum doula when I had my youngest, and I thought I've got this under control. I've trained people. I know the ins and outs of it. But when you're so close to the emotion, I think that you can't see what is actually happening around you. And so I definitely had my postpartum doula come in, and she came in and helped me in the areas that I specifically needed help. And that's the piece that I feel is important for new moms to understand, is that there's a new wave of postpartum doulas coming into the sector. And it is not just dealing with your physical well-being, but also your mental health and your mental well-being. So you can do anything and have your postpartum doula do anything from meal preps with you each week to overnight stays to going to doctor's appointments with you and taking notes. And I know wrestling a 3-week old on a changing table and there's explosive diapers happening. I needed a second person there to take notes for me. And then we could debrief in the car because I was so overwhelmed with the information coming in that was one area that I knew that I needed her in. And so our postpartum doulas are coming in anywhere, like you said, for 6 weeks. Mine come in for the first 3 years and really help in the day-to-day transitions, and help you realize and figure out the ins and outs. And then as you prepare maybe for a second or third child, how to integrate big brothers, big sisters into those conversations, how to manage and juggle being a family of three to a family of four. Those pieces that we don't always get to highlight and talk about, where there's a big shift for brothers and sisters too, and we see a lot of behaviors arise. Your postpartum doula can come in and help you integrate. I like to specialize and go in and help families with connecting, moms and dads, spouses, partners, with how to connect after having a baby, because intimacy looks completely different. For moms, a lot that can be, don't touch me after having the baby, and dad is trying to figure out what did I do wrong. Helping to explain that intimacy factor, that intimacy is going to look different for a little while. How can you still connect? Those are all pieces that postpartum doulas can really come in and give you that foundational piece to set the good foundation for your newborn, but also keep that foundation solid for the rest of your family.
I think that is so helpful. And that kind of segues into my next question for Christy,
Mhm.
is basically what a postpartum doula is from what I'm gathering, is just extra help for mom, for baby, for family. And I think that is so important for the early newborn phases.
Mhm.
And also, I love, Emily, that you even said that it's for the first couple years of life. But Christy, I guess my question for you is, why is it so important to have resources, whether it's a postpartum doula or maybe your mother-in-law, your
Mhm.
mother, your father, but
Mhm.
why is that so important? And I love the saying, it takes a village to raise a family, to raise a baby, because that's so true in this
Mhm.
situation.
It's absolutely true. I think a lot of parents, I mean, there are people who've used doulas, but I think a lot more people use their family members. So mothers, their mother-in-law, and grandmas, aunts, all the people that you have in your life who are, especially those who've been moms, they get it and they can help you get through those days. I think it's really important to take stock in what you need to be a happy person. So some people, for me, my sleep only happens at night. I'm not good at sleeping when baby sleeps. So if I had to do it all over again, I would have focused my energies either getting family or childcare providers to take care, nannies take care of my children at night. If I had known how little sleep I could get during the day, I would have hired someone to take care of my children at night. So having those resources up up and ready to go before you give birth is really important. Number two, know that you are important. I think once we give birth, something about our hormones make us feel that it is all on us. We have to do all of
Yep.
this and create this perfect environment for this child, or they're going to break. And so I think we need to remember that we need to refuel. So whether it's having an hour or two at the end of the night when the kids go to bed to be by yourself, to watch Netflix, to or you need an hour during the day to like exercise or do whatever it is that makes you feel happy, make time for that, put that in the schedule, make it as important as as taking care of your kid or whatever 100 mommy things that you're expected to do. That's really important. And then keep checking in with yourself or have other people check in with you so that you can pick up so others can pick up when you aren't picking it up, because it is very difficult to recognize when depression is starting to set in, because all you're doing is go go go. I need to do this, be, change, feed, go to sleep. It's Oh gosh, I hate to give that expectation to first moms, but it's a little
It's okay.
relentless. It's a little
It is.
relentless. And when you have when it's your second kid and you have a kind of a small first child, holy moly. You 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 didn't know what parenting could be like until you have more than one kid. So just heads up, I think it's really important to have other care providers, but also other moms who really get what the responsibility is. Makes you feel more comfortable with having guidance to help with your baby, but knowing your child is safe and that you can actually fall asleep and trust this person completely. So I think that helps.
Also, and I know, talking from my experience, and you definitely nailed it, is I felt like I had to do everything. And yes, I knew my husband was like totally capable. He is super dad. However, I just wanted to. I was like, no, it's fine. I'll wake up and feed baby. I'll pump and rock the
Mhm.
baby at the same time. I
Mhm.
know in the break, but I wanted to talk about this. You mentioned a little bit about pumping at night.
Oh,
I
yes.
are pumping in the day to save the bottle for at night. I was pumping round the clock. I was so worried about my milk supply. I wanted to have a good milk supply. So I had a freezer stash. I had bottles in the fridge, yet I
Mhm.
still chose to forgo sleep. I was just
Mhm.
awake, right?
Yeah.
And feeding my daughter that way. Can you talk a little bit? And I feel like this is a really good tip that I wish I heard. What can mothers who choose to breastfeed do when they're pumping in the day to kind of get a
Mhm.
little bit of extra sleep at night?
Yeah. Okay. So one way to do that is, and this works even better for moms with plentiful supply, or even just enough to pump a bottle during the day, especially your highest producing time during the day, like in the morning, and having a bottle ready for nighttime so that you can get a solid 5 hour block of sleep, and that can be fed by a partner or family member, and then you wake up for the next. Now that's going to be different for every person. Okay, some moms have very low capacity, which means they can't go very long until they become very engorged. And unfortunately, if you become engorged, then it can kind of send signals to reduce your milk supply. Now, I'm not saying though that you should prioritize your milk supplies over your sleep. That is completely up to you. For some moms, they are going to need that sleep, that 5 hours of sleep every single night, and that has to be the priority to make sure they can not only develop health and mental health and physical health problems, but also so that they can continue to breastfeed. So it has to be sustainable, whatever you come up with. So I think that is one strategy that moms can do to to reserve the time at night to get a block of sleep. The other scenario is and the other scenario is, let's say you're a pumping mom or you have some sort of pumping schedule. A lot of parents who have low milk supply are prescribed a triple feeding regimen. Did you do that? So were you doing that? Did
Yes,
you do that?
so I did. I have PCOS, and so
Mhm.
and I know with women with PCOS, the worry is low milk supply.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I did not have low milk supply. However, I was just not given good advice. Honestly,
Uh,
I was triple feeding for probably 6 to 8 weeks because
oh,
I was so and now
oh my
a year later,
goodness.
my daughter is a year old. A year later, I'm looking back and I'm still breastfeeding her. However, I was engorged. I was way too much milk. I was always
Wow.
engorged, and that's why it was so difficult and it hurt me so
Oh,
much for six
yeah.
weeks. And once I stopped pumping at 6 weeks and I just exclusively breastfed her,
Hmm.
um,
Settle
everything
down.
was wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
settle
everything was
down.
great. We were all sleeping more. It was so yeah, I think I wish I would have saved a pump session, right? So pumps during the day like normal,
Yeah,
and do, kind of triple feeding her, giving her boob milk and then from the bottle. And then
right.
I wish I would have just, had my husband give her a bottle,
I
if she was
know.
hungry at night. So yeah, that is something this is such a useful tip for next baby whenever, I decide to
Yes.
try again. I will be using this. Yes.
Exactly. And just a word to triple feeding moms out there. I was one of them as well. And you know what it you did it for extra long time. I'm so
Yes.
but know that triple feeding is really, really hard. And for some people, many people, they can't go longer than 4 to 7 days doing it. And because triple feeding can be round the clock. If you're doing every 3 hours pumping, then you essentially don't get any sleep for weeks and any longer than 3 hours. So that is really difficult, and for some, it's really not recommended because,
Yeah.
especially if you have a history of mental health problems, it is asking for an exacerbation of that mental health problem. And
Definitely. I
so,
remember I would like set alarm clocks and it's so funny, and this is a whole different topic, baby
mhm.
sleep, but my daughter got to a point before the 4 month regression where she was sleeping 4 to 5 hours straight, and I would still wake up, have my alarm set at midnight, pump, run downstairs, put it in the fridge, and then go back to sleep. Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Mhm, yeah.
I just wanted to jump in with a couple things. One is that um, I think that, like, if a mother wants to exclusively breastfeed and not do pumps or bottles and she has enough milk, it is possible to increase your amount of sleep um, and rest by kind of individualizing the way you do sleep. Like, for example, I worked with a family where mom was exclusively breastfeeding, she was exhausted. And what we did is we had her and her husband learn how to have him position baby on mom
Oh,
or next
wow.
to mom in bed, and he would bring the baby, monitor so that mom, was could sleep or rest or have her eyes closed, and monitor baby so that baby was safe.
Uh-huh.
Didn't roll over or anything. And so, and then when the feeding was over, he would take the baby and put baby back to sleep in the crib. And
Wow.
also another thing is just having comfortable positions for every single feeding is so critical. Like, a lot of people feel like, we're taught that, like, your baby has to be latched correctly, and it seems so complicated. And I see moms just kind of hunching over and, like, being in these contorted positions, and you just feel like trapped in a chair. You can't relax your muscles. And so just finding those comfortable positions where you can just go, and relax into your pillows and everything.
Mhm, mhm.
That just is so great. And so I love pumps and bottles and formula as tools to support um, breastfeeding and to support infant feeding in general. But it is possible to protect your mental health and exclusively breastfeed,
Mhm,
if you have the milk capacity to do so.
I love that. And I guess my last follow-up question for you, Lynette, is for the women who, come to see you because they have breastfeeding struggles, that in it of itself, I mean, for me, it was pain. I was so engorged all the time. And I was just like, this can't be natural. You always hear breastfeeding is so natural. And to me, it was not
Right,
natural. My
right.
mother didn't breastfeed. My mother-in-law didn't. So I really didn't have any support. I guess my question for you and for the mothers who are pregnant right now and think, oh, wait, is breastfeeding not natural? What are some tips and tricks that you can give? That way it eases their mind in those. I want to ask two-part questions in the early weeks, and then as well, because
Okay.
you talked a little bit about latch and position, and then how that can change as baby gets older, because you were so right. In the early weeks, I was doing the cradle. And then I was taught the
Mhm.
flipple, and then I was taught the football hold, as my baby kind of got older. Can you kind of just break that down a little bit, feeding a baby and how it might change and how that's okay, for the mother and the mental health?
Yeah, I think going into it or at some point realizing that, your anatomy is unique, your baby's anatomy is unique. And so no one else, no book or whatever can tell you exactly what's right in terms of positioning yourself and your baby. You kind of have to learn together what's most comfortable for you, your body and your actual nipple that the baby's latched onto. Um, so, take all the advice that you get with, the understanding that it's something that you and your baby will work on and figure out together. And then at a certain point, you'll realize that the baby can just see your nipple and just dive in and latch on their own. And
Yep.
it's so cool. I remember once with one of my babies, I don't even remember who, like I was leaning over the bathtub to bathe one of them, and the other one just kind of crawled under me and just lifted my shirt and latched on. It was so adorable. Um, and um, yeah, so just, stay in touch with your baby and, your check in with your body. That's a huge thing, checking in with your body. Moms are so focused on the baby that they forget to think to themselves, I need to relax my shoulders. And so, just having a reminder that, it's helpful to do that. So you can just like, you might want a footstool under your feet and you didn't realize it until you actually thought about what do I need to be more comfortable. Um, and I wanted to say something else about what we were talking
Hmm.
about before about family helping out. And I was listening to Emily, and it reminded me about that cartoon You Should Have Asked about the mental load. And I think that, we're realizing that moms carry this huge mental load and no one else knows about it. And, we often don't ask for help. We're not used to asking for help. So, what the advice that I give a lot of husbands, partners, grandparents, and whatever is just, don't wait to be asked.
Oh,
If there's dishes in the
yes.
sink, just do
Amen.
them,
Preach.
you know, and anticipate what needs to be done. Don't wait for someone to ask you or don't ask, should I
I
do the
so agree
dishes?
because a
Just do
lot of
them.
moms feel like they don't want to ask.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. They have like the biggest burden, and it's like
Yeah.
all I want is someone to take
Yeah.
over and just help and not ask.
Yeah. Yeah. But then at the same time, and I was guilty of this, you have to let
Oh,
go of it
so
being done
agree.
your way.
So agree. That's true too.
That's so hard.
I just wanted to say one thing too, because I just want to make sure that I'm representing all our combo feeding and exclusive formula feeding families as well, and addressing their newborn expectation needs too. All those things are also really important ways to feed babies, and you also need help just as much as the exclusive breastfeeding moms, because
1,000%.
right, I mean, it's hard all around. And so and then just to give some context, some moms know they want to combo feed from the start, from the very first day, because they had problems with it. They feel more comfortable knowing that, let's say, if they've had problems with milk supply, they feel more comfortable that nothing's going to happen as far as their baby not developing a complication, not getting adequately fed. Those are very, very valid methods to start off with. And even if it's you have no problems with milk supply, you just don't want to. That's totally up to you. And so having that expectation and maybe having that conversation with your obstetrician and your pediatrician and all the people wherever you're delivering, tell them up front, this is how I'm going to feed my baby. Please don't come in and shame me. Please don't tell me. I know what the benefits are of every single type of feeding, and this is how I've chosen. I think having that conversation up front might prevent unwanted comments during a very important time in your life, things that might trigger depression and self-loathing, guilt, all those things. It's a very ripe time for feeling very sensitive over comments. And so maybe laying the groundwork with the people who are going to take care of you, make sure they know what you are intending to do and that it's your choice, and that's how you confidently want to feed your baby.
I love that. I love all of this. I guess, I mean, that we covered so much from infant sleep to postpartum depression and anxiety to breastfeeding struggles. Anything else you guys want to lastly mention before we wrap up today's show? I think it was full of great information that, again, I've said this probably the third time. I wish I listened to when I was pregnant with my first, but anything else?
As a physician, sorry, I felt like I
I
should say something about medications. So
Yes.
so I just want to make sure that moms know that if they develop depression and anxiety during the postpartum period, really anytime that they're breastfeeding, if they're concerned about the medications being unsafe to take during breastfeeding, there are many options that are safe during breastfeeding, especially SSRIs, the most commonly being Zoloft and maybe Paxil are both safe during pregnancy. Both of those have been studied, and several others. Some tricyclic antidepressants like amitriptyline has been shown to be safe. And then everything else you should really consult with your physician who can look up on LactMed whether a medication is safe. It is important to take care of your mental health, and sometimes just talking it out is not enough. You have to take medications. If you need it, do it, and don't let breastfeeding be a reason for you not to take medications, because your mental health is super important for you and your baby. And then if you have to take medications that is not compatible with breastfeeding, your baby needs you more than they need your milk. That's I don't know if that's going to ring true. Some people will hear that and like, yeah, but maybe if you get to this point and when you're making that decision, I knew I needed to take medications. They may have been compatible with breastfeeding, which at the time that made that decision, I wasn't sure, and so I stopped breastfeeding, and I was only producing 1 ounce a day anyway. So who cares? But take it, because there's really nothing more important to a baby than their mom. I can't I can't overstate that. So please take care of yourself and prioritize your health.
I love that.
This actually fits in perfectly here from what Christy said. Um, when you're having breastfeeding problems and you have a mental health issue, or even if you don't have a pre-existing mental health issue, it's important to fit in some time just for snuggling with your baby without worrying about feeding. If someone's on this triple feeding plan, mom is hooked up to a pump all the time, or breastfeeding for 20 minutes or whatever, the whole day is just taken up with struggles about feeding, and sometimes the mom just feels like her only role is as a milk producer and everybody else gets to cuddle the baby.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's so important, just to have the snuggles and the love and the joy that comes with holding your newborn. So, my heart breaks when I hear about a mom going back to work and all she did for her maternity leave was try to make breastfeeding work.
Mhm.
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 That's just so, so sad. You
Mhm.
can't get that time back.
Yeah.
I hate to be such a downer, but I think just my point is that, find some snuggle time.
Mhm.
It's not all about feeding.
Yeah.
I loved that. And I
Yes.
loved the newborn snuggles for me were my favorite.
Oh.
It was so lovely. Like when you
Mhm.
just are bouncing your daughter, or I had a daughter, my daughter around, and then she just kind of falls asleep while I'm just, doing
Yeah.
little things like putting the dishes away quietly. And I'm like, oh, are you sleeping? It's time for, mom to take a break and sit down and just enjoy the newborn snuggles and the
Mhm.
Yeah.
contact naps during the day. Yeah, it
Mhm.
definitely
Mhm.
it boosts, my happy hormones. And
Mhm.
it's such an important time to do it because you were having this huge hormonal shift of now baby is outside and you're trying to get your hormones, somewhat back to normal. And don't forget you have a diaper on too, and so you have all these things going on and healing from birth. It's just, yeah, the newborn snuggles is definitely a great way for mom to just feel good.
Mhm.
Yeah, and actually that just reminds me, like, taking care of mom, making her feel safe and happy and cared for is gonna help with breastfeeding. It's
Yes.
not all just like hook up a pump and, stimulate this and that and the other thing.
I absolutely agree with Lynette on that one, and really setting reasonable expectations and then adjusting again, because we know that babies are constant adjustments of what they like, don't like, what works today is not going to work tomorrow. And then realize that these are just tiny moments in your life. As tired, scared, worried that you are right in this moment, you're going to look back and you're going to miss those pieces, and you're going to wish that you were just more calm, still, and in the moment. So just give yourself some grace and allow yourself time, and um, give yourself that opportunity to not be
Mhm.
perfect, just be what your baby needs you to be.
I love that. I think that's a great way to end our episode. So, thank you all so much for joining us today. Be sure to check out newmommymedia.com, where we will have all of our podcast episodes, plus videos and more. Well, that wraps up our show for today. Thanks for listening. If you love Preggy Pals as much as we do, please consider checking out the amazing businesses that sponsor our show week after week. And we'd also love for you to tell another pregnant mama about this resource, which is, of course, absolutely free. And if you want to check out some of our other podcasts we produce, such as Newbies, and that's for newborns and new mamas, Parent Savers, which is for toddlerhood, the Boob Group, which is all about breastfeeding, and Twin Talks, then visit our website at newmommymedia.com. Thanks for listening to Preggy Pals, your pregnancy, your way.
Hey mamas, don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.